This is episode 6 of Innovating Education, featuring Dina Buchbinder, co-founder of Education for Sharing. For every problem that life sends us, or that life put in our way, we have the choice. Will we build something constructive out of it, or we will build something destructive and negative? The thing that I love about Dina Buchbinder and the conversation that we had is a true, powerful ability to transform negatives and problems and challenges into positives. She has that childlike amazement and true consciousness that is just so radiant and impactful. Thinking about it, it's no surprise that our organization is called Education for Sharing. Dina Buchbinder is a Mexican social entrepreneur who co-founded Education for Sharing in 2006. Education for Sharing mission is to form better citizens from childhood through innovative education programs based on the power of play and physical activity. Education for Sharing uses social and emotional learning techniques, and every session combines fun and creative games that prompt children to reflect on global challenges and civic values, including the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Since the organization's inception, more than 1.3 million individuals have benefited from its programs. In 2020, Education for Sharing became the first Mexican-born organization to be honored with the prestigious World Innovation Summit for Education WISE Award. Find out more and visit the website educationforsharing.org or by following them on Facebook at Education for Sharing, on Twitter at Education4S, and on Instagram at Education for Sharing.
Talk to me nice, talk to me honestly. Look in my eyes, don't let it fall on me. Say you're a good guy.
So, Dina Buchbinder, welcome. It's a joy to have you. This is really an interview that I've been looking for, knowing that you're specializing in the field of play, in the field of games, in giving a purpose to education, in touching communities, in giving this vision of a holistic education in a country that is particularly dear to me. I haven't got the chance to go to Mexico, but I got so many friends from there. So welcome. This is going to be your home today. This is going to be your space. Hopefully we can elevate your voice, and I'm sure our audience is very happy to find out more about you, about your wonderful project and all the great things you are doing.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's really a joy to be with you and with your audience.
That's beautiful. So my first question, Dina, is what is your first memory of play?
Wow. My first memory of play, that's a magic place. I would think my brother would have to be involved. I have an older brother, 2, sometimes 3 years older, Daniel, and we would let our imagination go wild. So I really have a sense of play ever since I was born, and probably before I was born. My brother was always doing all sorts of games with me, and he would dress up to as a clown maybe for my 3-year-old birthday, and and we would come up with lots of imaginary fantasy worlds where we would even play to create a club, where we could do adventures, and we would do all sorts of plans about what we wanted to build, and we wanted to engage with nature around and pick up everything we could find, from branches to maybe plants, and to build things.
I believe you continue to do that later on, building things and using your imagination. Is this something that runs into your family, that creativity and that imagination?
I can think of my mom being really creative, and even in the stories that she used to tell us, bringing these fantastic worlds, and my grandmother as well. I remember very much my grandma using what she called gypsy beds, where we would bring a lot of all the pillows and blankets we could find next to her bed, and we would feel like we went camping with her in her room, and she would tell us all these stories and dress us up as Indian princess and Indian characters, and she would it was really meaningful, all the stories that she would bring with her love for cultures and for diversity, and all the travels that she was able to do, not only physically but also through the books that she read, because she really loved to read.
While I was reading about your story and a little bit your biography, I understand that your background coming from with a different background that when you were a young child and going to school at the beginning, you experimented a little bit being an outcast, at least when you were very young. I would like to know, how did this experience of being different from the rest of the group, how did it forge you, and what were your way to create your own world and to pass that challenge?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, indeed. So it's a interesting story that I think many people can relate to. So, for instance, I grew up in a mainly Catholic country that I love, which is Mexico, and I would go to school and find that every kid was excited about, for example, Christmas coming, and maybe Santa Claus coming and putting up a Christmas tree, and I never could put up a Christmas tree. I am Jewish, and my parents just wouldn't allow putting up a Christmas tree, and I would really dream of all this Santa Claus and Christmas, and because I was completely surrounded by this excitement, and I even remember I think I imagined it, but at the time it seemed real. I think I saw Santa Claus with his reindeer outside my window one night. I really wanted to meet him and to be a part of that world. So I would get somewhat frustrated with this. It may sound silly, but I think it really speaks about a sense of belonging and about sharing an excitement that is the case with your friends at school and the world that you are living in. So I discovered that being different is not necessarily bad, but you can also experience the others' excitement as your own, and you can also share what you bring to the table that's perhaps different or unique, or and share it, and being able to translate it as a joy that others can feel, even though they not maybe from your culture or your religion or even speak the same language.
Divertimos y aprendimos a jugar en equipo y a cuidar la naturaleza y que las mujeres tienen el mismo derecho que todos.
A mí me gusta mucho que compartimos todo.
Mi favorito es hacer mi trabajo en equipo.
Venir a la VIH-Sida.
Combatir la hambre y la pobreza.
Cuidar el medio ambiente.
Combatir la mortalidad infantil. Enseñanza universal.
La igualdad de niñas y niñas.
Mejorar la salud materna.
Actually, when you speak like that, I can definitely see the connection between what you are saying right now and your connection with the way you are working in the organization, which we will talk about later on. You talk about that sense of belonging, you talk about the sharing, you talk about what you've learned from this experience. How does it connect from these perspectives with, and I want to specifically start with, I know you're working with different communities and different groups, but I would like to start with the root and the first group that you actually started working with, which are the indigenous communities in Mexico. Can you tell us more about the context of the indigenous communities in Mexico from this perspective of sense of belonging, of sharing? Can you tell us more about this context, and particularly from the perspective of your beneficiary?
Thank you so much. Actually, it's a sacred memory for me, because, and thank you for asking about the first one. I will travel in time 13 and a half years ago when we went for the first time to an indigenous shelter in the middle of the mountains of Chihuahua with the Raramuris.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an indigenous group in Mexico that this, I think, is the first indigenous group that I really got to interact in a deep way and to really get to know and to be marveled at their at who they are. And so I remember it was a shock for many reasons. One, they live in one of the most beautifully geographical places that you can imagine in the mountain ranges of the north of Mexico, where they have a very extreme weather, and the clothes they wear are spectacularly beautiful and special, and I remember thinking, wow, is this a special day in the year that they are wearing these outfits? And then they explain that they wear this kind of clothes every day. These are their clothes, and the joy that I remember feeling from seeing how the children played and really unfolded their energy was breathtaking. And then it was also shocking to see, for example, when we started the games, and sometimes, of course, the language barrier could be a barrier, but we found out it not to be a barrier, because games allow you to enter that universal space of shared connection and of shared meaning. So we started to play, and in the beginning it was also shocking to see that the girls were extremely shy, and they would even at the beginning cover their mouths with their arm and cover their faces, and they would not speak to participate. They were so shy, and little by little, as the play progressed, they would loosen up, and then start participating more. And even by the end of our time there, they were already speaking out loud and sharing their thoughts, and also coming up with new ways of how that game evolved. And so all the experience was shocking, in the sense that we usually think of, unfortunately, in the Western world, we tend to undervalue, and sometimes in an unconscious way, we tend to undervalue the greatness and the richness and the wealth that these original people have. So in some ways, this has gotten to them, in the sense that they don't necessarily feel the proudest of something that they should feel the proudest from who they are, where they come from, their culture, their language, their traditions, and they have just so much to share and to offer, and sometimes they feel almost as if they were less, and this is something that really shocked me to see firsthand, and to feel, and to see that it's also something that can be changed dramatically when we start asking, at the end of the games and all the sessions of education for sharing, we introduced an activity that is called the treasure box, where we exchange boxes filled with treasures made by the children from different communities. And we started asking them, so what would they like to share about their geography, their culture, their dresses, their games, their language. And it was so impressive to see how they started to realize that they had so much to share, and the ideas and the things that they came up with really are absolutely invaluable. They cannot be, they don't have any price, because they are absolutely, no money can buy what they have to share. So once they realized that they were going to share these as treasures with other children who live a complete different reality, they started to feel, you could tell that they were very proud, and they realized that it's very special what they have, and it's really meaningful, and something absolutely worth sharing.
Hi everyone. Thank you for being part of this journey. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm just getting started with this podcast, and you leaving me a review helps a lot. Make sure you join the Facebook group to continue this conversation and discover exclusive content. Subscribe to the newsletter to find out more about the episodes and the guests.
I say, oh, my baby.
¡Serio! ¡Yune! Muy bien. Ya encontramos la caja. ¿Qué habrá ahí? ¿Qué habrá?
Thank you. Indeed, this is something that I'm very passionate about. Indigenous cultures, the wealth of these cultures all around the world, in terms of the wealth of the community, the wealth of the spiritual wealth, first and foremost, the wealth of sharing. Talking about sharing, can you tell us about one story that you may have of, specifically, I prepared that question about the treasure box, if I'm correct. Can you tell us about one story on top of your head that comes back to you regarding that treasure box?
Yes, absolutely.
Or more than one.
That was yes. We have so many stories with the whole education for sharing journey, and with the treasure boxes that we have exchanged imagine thousands of boxes filled with treasures made by children from different communities. So I will go back to that experience with the Raramuris from Chihuahua, where so they sent this box filled with treasures. They wrapped around their box in one of their blankets, and so that the treasures would keep would not break, and to protect them. And then they built a wooden house as the box.
Wow.
Like a wooden house where they live. So it was a precious box filled with precious treasures made with their hands. There was nothing they bought or nothing they received. It was everything made by themselves. And so I remember we exchanged that box with a private school in Mexico City from a fancy neighborhood, and the children that received the box, being in an international school, they could not believe that children their age could be able to do these marvelous things with their hands. For example, a wooden ball that they use in their marathons and ultra marathons. This indigenous group is known for many things, but among them they are runners. They run barefoot through the mountains, and they do ultra marathons. They row in very extreme weather conditions, and we would open the box. We would make a special ceremony to open the box, and these children were in complete awe with what they saw and the games that these children played and the letters in Raramuri that they wrote to them, and the drawings they made about the geography that surrounded them, and so it was so heartwarming to see that the children from the private school would take off their tennis shoes, their socks, to start kicking the ball as if they were the children in the Raramuri mountains, and they would wrap around themselves with the blanket that they wrapped around their toys in, and they would really, really start shifting from this Western mentality that I was explaining before to a more appreciative, like a genuinely appreciative mentality of saying, wow, these people are just extraordinary, and we cannot wait to meet them and to learn from them and to play their games with them and to learn Raramuri, their language. And it's so funny because at one moment in time, when we told them that they would exchange the box with the indigenous community, the first thing they thought was, okay, so we can buy a computer for them and send them a computer, send them blankets, send them, very in a way, like thinking how to help them, which is on one hand you could think it's nice to want to help others, but we really, really want to stress leveling the playing field so that we can know each other as people and know each other as humans that have so much to share, not necessarily to think of each other as, oh, poor thing, they need this and they need that. It's more like, okay, be amazed of what each other has to bring to the table because of who they are and where they come from and their legacy, as their spiritual legacy also, no? So that was a tremendous gift of sharing.
¿Alguien conoce el Distrito Federal?
Y una maqueta del Distrito Federal. Para mí la caja del tesoro es un lugar donde se pueden guardar cosas del arte.
Nos mandan de otra escuela para que nosotros veamos qué hacen allá.
beautiful story. It's the power of sharing. The power of sharing. A lot of time we look at things, as you say, especially in the Western world, through the material eyes. And I think this is such an amazing example of what we can learn from looking at things. And there's a key word that I like, and when I was preparing this interview that came back a lot, it was the word amazement. And there's something about that power of amazement, which is kind of a spiritual thing, because it means being in that moment. And this is what you've learned from these children, right? The power of amazement.
Yes, the power of amazement, that I think really intrinsically we have that, except we don't nurture it enough throughout as we grow up. Same happens with creativity. Same happens with other very, very unique gifts that we have as human beings, and that we don't cherish enough, and we don't appreciate enough to keep on nurturing in for example, our the most conventional school systems, if you may.
Yes. How has it been for you to go from going through conventional schools, that's my understanding, to, as I say, like meeting your friend who was working in Canada, who introduced you to that model of using play to develop or to grow other aspects of life and to have an impact? How has been that transition, going from a classical model to discovering this new way of doing things and then adapting it and making something new, something adapted to the circumstances and the place where you are?
It clicked to the depths of my system when I came across this friend from Canada that is still one of my closest friends until today, because as I grew up, I was participating in the Scouts movement.
Yes.
And so this was on Saturdays, and we would always play to bring a reflection or do activities to then reflect on certain values, but I always experienced it as a non-formal education experience, right?
Yes.
Or camps that I participated in. But really, it just, I didn't know it was possible to bring it to the formal education sector until I started to try with my friend, and we started piloting it and seeing the effect it had in teachers to begin with, and also, of course, in children and in their parents and in the whole school community. It just is a shot of life. It's a shot of life, because you become alive. You are awake when you are playing, and your senses are awake.
Yes.
And so you don't need to sit passively to receive information and to just filter that information as it's given to you, but you can create your own understanding of how it feels, why this is important, why do you care. And so I think that's the translation that I had from growing up in a, as you say, conventional school, but also having this other resource as a source of information, this non-formal education that I was involved in, and just trying it out really made me open my eyes and see that, wow, it's the education systems that we can work with. Education can be different. As I grew up in this more conventional education system, to be honest, I didn't understand what was the sense of going to school? Like, why was I there? And I would get a lot in trouble from being distracted or from playing with the person next to me in the classroom, and I would get kicked off the class several times, but because I wanted to interact and I wanted to, to feel the play and to move to learn. And of course, I am not an atypical case. This happens
to me.
Does it happen to you too, Steve?
I shown your profile to one of my friends, and she said, "Oh, she's just like you." Could not stay in place, didn't feel adapted to school, felt like an outcast. Yes.
Yes, and really it's funny how I think so many children feel like us. And it's so common as humans to want to play and to move, to interact, to learn. So of course, now that 13 years after, when I think about the education systems, it's hard for me to understand that they are the way they are.
Yes.
Yes.
I have you touch into something that is very interesting, and it's the sense of why are you going to school and the sense of purpose of education. Can you tell us how are you able to establish this clear purpose within your program, within the different communities that you are working with? How do you do that?
The sense of purpose is probably one of the most important aspects of our lives. And so really, when we have the opportunity to experience that sense of purpose, I think it's very hard to go back before that, no? And so what we have been doing is we use the Sustainable Development Goals, these great global challenges that the UN set, now called the 2030 Agenda.
Yes.
And these issues cover a wide range of challenges that we face as a planet, anywhere from eradicating extreme poverty and hunger to quality education, to reducing inequalities, to climate change, etc. And children can really connect to these issues, even though they are very abstract if you just read the title of the SDG. But if you actually play about these issues and use the space of play to experiment, why is it that you care, then children will come up with all sorts of forms of expression of how they are living firsthand these issues in their community, in their everyday lives, and what is it that comes up for them that they would like to do to address them.
Usted, así como niños, ¿será que pueden dar información a sus papás, a sus hermanos de cómo cuidar la salud?
Sí, que no tomen droga, que no peleen.
De esa manera estamos previniendo la salud.
Sí.
I think one of the things that is very interesting is somehow how you are able to hack games that can be common games to give it a purpose or give it a different meaning. I found that very powerful. Can you elaborate on that and give us examples or stories of that?
Absolutely. So the most beautiful part is that these are extremely simple games that we are all familiar with in some way or another. Maybe the name of the game changes from not only country to country, but region to region, but really the essence of the game is known to most children that we've played with, and it's fascinating because, for example, we will use a game like dodgeball or tag to bring about. We adapt this very common game. We call it Doctor Tag or Doctor Dodgeball, and so there will be two teams.
Yes.
And in each team there is a doctor with a number of medicine shots, and the ball that is passed around represents a disease. So, for instance, imagine the ball is the coronavirus, and so we need to avoid getting the coronavirus, and we need to do strategies in each one of the teams. As it happens with the coronavirus, it's not that we are trying to make others sick, but the virus travels through air, right?
Yes.
And so it will happen that it will travel from one community to the other, and so we need to understand the role of doctors, the role of each one of us in the community to prevent the disease. And as it happens in real life, children that get tagged by the ball, and when the medicine shots are over, they run out. Children have to go out of the game, as it happens also in real life.
Yes.
So it's at the end of each one of our games, we make circles of reflection, which are the key part after the game, where we really invite children to come up with their own conclusions on what was the game about to start with, and then what kind of values were present or not. If maybe there were if there was fair play or not, if the ball was passed only within the boys and not passing it with the girls, if there was gender equality, if there was respect, empathy, and so we can elaborate in a real situation. How did it display? No, how did the value display? And if it wasn't there, what could have changed? And so it really allows us to understand what difference would values make in our lives. And also we touch on what was this game about. So, for example, it was about SDG number 3, no, to promote health and well-being for all. So we can come up with concrete examples, and you know children, they will start telling you about a story of their aunt or their grandma, or
True.
and they are super spontaneous and honest, and just bring about like real life stories. And so they say, actually, I'm very worried about this. And we ask, what can you do about this? You are a change agent. You have the power of changing things that you don't agree with or that you're worried about. So what would you do? And children really start coming up with ideas of a health campaign or a play, like a theater play, to communicate with the community, to share information. They come up with all sorts of really impactful ideas as change makers, even if they are 6 or they are 12, or
Of course.
regardless the age. Yes.
Declaro la paz de mi mejor amigo que es México.
Before I go into the next section, I would like for you to describe a little bit the situation that you've encountered when you started working in these communities, and what were the challenges that these communities were facing, so the audience can understand the importance of your work and also the progress that has been done.
For example, we have historically and mostly worked with vulnerable communities, although education for sharing is for everyone.
Of course.
But we have focused in more vulnerable communities, and not only rural communities, but also urban communities that are impacted by lots of crime, drugs, violence, narco traffic. So we have, for example, faced sometimes when we really go deep in the community, so it's not like we give a 1 hour talk and then we say like, yeah, we have these beneficiaries. No, we really stay for 1 year and we bring facilitators from the community to really follow up for 1 year, so we can in this development of a deep connection we get to experience so much and learn so much from the communities. And I remember asking children in one of these contexts that I'm describing, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And the children would say, you know what, I want to be a drug dealer. I want to be a narco. And this is a heartbreaking answer from someone that has all their lives ahead of them, and that have such bright hearts and minds. And so their context sometimes have a really big impact on their dreams and on the things that they look up to. So I am forever grateful to experience the shift of an answer like this when going through the education for sharing methodology.
Yeah.
and asking again after they find that there are something called these SDGs and that they are actually brilliant at coming up with solutions to address them, having a transcendental like an inflection point to say, actually I want to be a teacher to bring more of this kind of games to an education in my community. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to build my own Olympics of respect. So they come up with all these ideas and that they can start pursuing from a complete different standpoint and not be determined by the context, but defy the context that surrounds them to find windows of opportunity that allows them to see themselves in another light.
Pues ahora, como en Deportes para Compartir promovemos la actividad física, le traemos la visita de alguien.
¿Quién es? Un payaso.
Y no es un payaso.
Es una persona.
Something that I wanted to dig a little bit more into, because as you say, you come and you work with the full community in a holistic way, which is fascinating. How do you build, you mentioned it yourself, how do you build deep connections when you come to a community, you stay there for a year? Can you talk to us more about that journey of building these deep connections at different layers of these communities, from children to parents to educators, etc., etc.?
I think it's a matter of trust. It's a matter of building trust and from understanding that we have no agenda other than really get to know them and to play with them and to learn with them. And to build shared meaning together. So once I think people realize in the communities that we are not here to take advantage in any way, and that we really want to just get to interact with them and create this shared meaning, I think the most precious ways of gratitude have been shown, and it's really humbling to see that, for instance, in this kind of communities, people are the most grateful and the most elegant in their ways, and in the way that they really connect with what's valuable. For instance, we have we have arrived at communities where maybe the most marginalized community gave us a watermelon as a sign of their gratitude, no? And we have been in the airport with a huge watermelon that they gave us, and like coming back home, or they will cook the only chicken they have left to show their appreciation of what you're bringing. And if you think about it, we're not bringing them, the what people would maybe think of as valuable. Like, we're not bringing them money, we're not bringing them material things. So this has been really important to build trust and to navigate the complexities, because each school is a whole world in itself, with lots of challenges, with lots of requirements, with lots of teachers are overwhelmed. And so I think one of the things that also earns the trust is to share that we are pertinent. We are not giving them more work, but we are sharing a way to, for example, teach what they have to teach in different ways that also will make them happier, that will allow them to build a deeper connection with their students. And also, by that, I mean also deeper connection with the parents of the students, where we usually find a lot of clashes between the teachers and the parents. So that also earns a trust when you are really offering and sharing something that's useful, practically speaking, and they can go beyond these clashes, historic clashes, because the teachers think that the parents are not around enough, and the parents think that the teachers are lazy. And so when you actually use the power of play to interact between these two groups they both have the best intention, but it's not always the easiest dynamics. You can really build bridges between them and let them know of the real intentions that they have, and start working together in a way that they didn't know of before.
Would you say that it's kind of similar to a reconciliation in a way, from what you're saying, between different
That's a beautiful word. That's beautifully said, Steve. Yes, I very much think it's a reconciliation at many levels.
Through play.
Yes.
Bueno, mi nombre es Ricardo Enrique, me dicen Quique, me gusta el boli. Lo que más me preocupa, la pobreza alimenticia, pobreza educativa, pobreza económica, todo lo que es pobreza, y hablo maya español.
One thing, and I quote you from one interview that I've seen of you, and you mentioned making the children becoming heroes of the community. And I found that very powerful because, as you said at the beginning of this conversation, these are, for many, there's a colonial background. There's so many different elements where the sense of self-love, the sense of value has been damaged.
Yes.
And in your methodology, you are rebuilding this through the power of play. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how you do that, and if you have some stories of that shift that you are provoking into changing the vision and making the children becoming heroes of the community?
We have had the privilege to work extensively with a very diverse context and cultures, and it has been really moving and just magic to see the shift that children can have in in seeing the other, no, and understanding the other as, and realizing that on one hand each person is unique, and we all have so much to share, so that there is always something that you can contribute, always something that you can bring to make someone else's life better, and that there is an impact in your actions and the effect that your actions have in others. So, for example, we have worked a lot with 650 indigenous school shelters, and we have been amazed by the creativity and the richness, the wealth of all their culture. It's a millenary culture, and when we are able to exchange the gifts that they made in their treasure boxes with maybe children that live more in urban settings, the children in urban settings are really changing their perspective, and also seeing them as their own. So it's when each community is able to feel proud of who they are, and at the same time be genuinely curious about who others are, and create that shared space that we all as humans have, and to cherish that and to not give it for granted. There is a process of awakening, and there is a process of reconciliation, as you say, and this is something that we can't overlook, and that we need to bring to the surface and really highlight in all its glory, because we have so much potential and also a lot to learn from our history that we cannot afford to repeat, and we cannot afford to dismiss, and to not to recognize, because we need to recognize it and do something different. So this is a very friendly, healthy, inclusive.
Hablamos del cuidado del agua. Entonces todos, para ser embajadoras y embajadores, ¿qué creen? Necesitan pensar en una cosa que ustedes pueden hacer hoy para cuidar el agua.
Un niño, si está derramando el agua, le vamos a decir que no lo derrame.
Chócalas. Bien, embajadora. Bien, embajadora. Muy bien.
Now that I was listening to you and you talking about reconciliation and embracing his stories, and I kind of connected with kind of your story, what we said at the beginning, your background, your family coming from Ukraine and Poland, and your Jewish background, and you've seen what happened in your history, in your family history, and you've seen what happened also on the Mexican side. And I found it beautiful that you are using this as a tool to make change internationally.
Thank you.
It's like a cycle.
Thank you, Steve.
It's like a cycle, and it's also the proof that no matter what is your history, and no matter anything, can be used and transformed into something positive.
Absolutely. We have a choice. We always have a choice. And we need to be aware of the choice that we have, and to use it, and to make the most of it, and to make it real.
Can you talk about curiosity? And that's something that come out a lot. Curiosity and expanding horizons. It's also at the core of your mission and of your vision and of values. What is the power of curiosity and expanding horizons?
Wow.
I told you I'm prepared.
Wow. And beautiful, beautiful questions. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
Curiosity is the antidote for many of the illnesses that we have in this world, and to address the deepest of roots of racism or discrimination, and really the way forward to expand our horizons and to really see beyond ourselves, to focus on beyond ourselves, and it's infinite. No, the funny thing with curiosity that it has no limit. There's no boundary to curiosity, and when we are able to nurture that curiosity and to appreciate it and to be aware of how we are using it to really be, it sounds funny, but to be more human.
Yes,
which
that's
we
what
are.
we need.
Yes,
We need.
yes, exactly.
It's about, and I would say especially in the Western world, it's about learning to be human again, to grounded and connected.
Exactly.
That's the magical thing about the children, by the way, as you said before, like they are fully human, fully in the moment, fully present.
Yes.
And everything is a form of play.
Everything. Yes.
So this is what has been your last magical moment that you can think of with your organization? It doesn't have to be directly with you. It could be something with a colleague or one of your beneficiary or community. What has been the last beautiful magical moment that can come up to your mind like that?
Well, it's even not happened in Mexico. The last moment, I live in New York, and we have been working with a school in a very, very vulnerable context.
Yes.
that is considered a Title I school with with lots of challenges, and where the principal of that school used to tell me before we started, she had 20 kids that were crying and in her office at recess, every recess, and that had been punched, that had been told horrible things, that have been pushed around. And so she said, yes, I have to make a strategy to elevate, for example, the academic performance in science, but no, I will not start there. The children will not pay attention in any class if they don't have the like a strong platform of social emotional skills and the opportunity to really bring more of that precious selves that they have inside. And so she said, we need you yesterday, and you're starting now. And so we did start right away, and it has been just beyond words, the experience with that school that I've had the privilege to be more close in contact with, like physically going to the school before the pandemic for a year, and to see, for example, the immense change of the children that used to be very you know, really the way that they participate now has been a world of difference and a chasm of difference, where now they are not afraid to say what they think what they think, to share their reflections, to be more proud of who they are, and what is it that they can contribute. And this has been really a huge source of joy and pride and motivation to see the shift, and the whole school has really changed their culture, really introducing a different way of speaking to the children. I was very embarrassed of the way to see that some teachers spoke to the children, like really I felt between embarrassed and angry, and so it's also, we complain a lot about teachers, and teachers are this and teachers are that. Yes. But the truth is that teachers are people, and we forget that they are persons. There is a person, that feels, and that they are going through so much, and the kind of training that usually teachers receive is not necessarily the most the most human. Exactly.
When you're doing the most human job, I believe that a doctor and a teacher are the most human job, right? Healing and teaching are the two most noble thing you can do in this life, in my opinion. But still, the way we train them, the way we condition them, the pressure that there is, the testing, the measuring, etc., turn them into losing their humanity.
Absolutely, and really, let's not even go into what the salaries are, but also, even if you just focused on the training, most of the teachers that we have had the privilege of working hand in hand with have shared that before the training that Education for Sharing brings, their previous trainings had been the most boring ones, where they feel like they are falling asleep, literally. Like I wish it was an exaggeration, and it's something to really notice. It's how can you treat the heroes of our society, teachers, in a way that doesn't respond to the degree of importance of the work they do. No, so that is something that we are very proud of, very very aware of, and super inspired with teachers and their commitment and their struggle to make this world a better one all day, every day.
And let me tell you, you are truly a hero of change. I was wondering, how do you transform when you come into these communities and the teachers are the way they are and the culture? How do you shift the culture?
Well, I think they shifted themselves.
You create that space, you empower them to make that shift?
It's really interesting, because I do believe that we empower no one. I think they empower themselves. We give some tools and we walk with them the walk, but really it's themselves that bring about this change. And by the way, we end up learning so much more from them than what I think they learn from us. So at the end of the day, we are the ones that feel like we couldn't be more grateful with the learnings that we developed with the teachers, working with them hand in hand and seeing how they translate this methodology into their context, knowing and navigating and how to navigate their own context, knowing their children, knowing all the circumstances around and how they play with that. That is very truly inspirational.
Entonces, cada reunión tenemos que abordar esto con los padres de familia para concientizarlos más en participar, en colaborar, en apoyar en todo el ámbito, tanto educativo como social. Un trabajo que hicieron, por ejemplo, un grupo de padres de familia. Hicieron la limpieza del centro entre todos. Vemos que sí, se estaba limpiando, se estaba chapeando. Y antes cada quien por su parte. Y eso es importante.
And this interview is and has been a pleasure. It's been truly inspirational. Dina Buchbinder, muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. It's been beautiful. I think we learn, and I feel that we really learn about the power of amazement, the power of interconnectedness, the power of the community, the power of roots, of grounding, of learning. Learning is something that really came back in this conversation a lot, whether you were talking about working in Mexico, working in New York, and also you working in 3 other countries. But there's something about you that is always about learning and that thirst, that curiosity, and truly this organization, truly your vision, truly what you are doing with Education for Sharing is an extension of your vision, and I want to congratulate you for this. It's truly why I started this podcast, to elevate this voice, to present heroes of change, because a lot of time in our society we give this hero status to people accomplishing a lot of material success or economical success. But to me, as you said before, I truly believe that you are the heroes and your beneficiary and the communities you're working with, and these people that you are collaborating and co-creating with are also part of that heroic journey. So truly want to thank you. You can see the vision, you can see the change, you can see what school should be, and hopefully one day we get to that. I love the treasure box. I think even cities, every city should have that treasure box. And you are so much about sharing and about giving and the power of it. So once again, thank you very much. This has been such a beautiful interview, and I feel like we could go on for 3 hours because it's fascinating.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Muchas gracias.
Hartelijk dank.
Nos ayuda a los niños a ser mejores niños, ayudar al medio ambiente, a frenar el cambio climático, a acabar con la pobreza. Hay muchas maneras para ayudar a la humanidad.
Subieron más valores, se notó en los niños. Yo todos los jueves digo, hoy nos toca ciencia para compartir, y me levanto con ganas y ánimos.